Hey, thanks, Ali.
Hi, Sam.
Hey, Tim, how you doing?
I'm good.
All
Thank
right.
you for talking to me.
Just thanks for coming to the podcast, man. This is awesome. I just want to put it up front. I have been a fan of yours for quite some time. I have been following your career since pretty much Timmy the dog.
Really?
Yeah,
How is that possible?
I'll tell you how that's possible. I have a pretty cool roommate in college. So what we used to do is trade albums. So what we'll do, we'll say like, you listen to this from my collection, and I'll listen to some from your collection. And then from that, I got turned on to Dark Side. I got turned on to Soul Rock, as well as your comedy stage, and that just jumped into your whole career. So then from there, I just kind of like had this. Uh, Look out.
Wow,
Um,
that is amazing.
and you guessed
That's
on a few
so cool.
podcasts as well. So
That's
here
so
we
cool.
are.
Wicked. Well, that's wicked.
So I want to get to
Oh,
it.
that's so cool, though.
But before we even get started with the podcast, how have you been holding up during the pandemic? Are you okay? How have you been doing?
Oh, how much do you want to know?
I mean, let's
I'm
get it. I mean, like you want to jump into it.
I'm all right. I mean, I was doing all right. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm in Perth at the moment. Just came out of quarantine for 2 weeks because we've had to rush to Perth because my mum, who 4 weeks ago was a very healthy 71-year-old, has now got a terminal leukemia
Oh,
diagnosis.
I'm
So
sorry to hear that,
we're
man.
in a pretty bad sort of. I mean, look, I'm all right, but it's a bit dramatic. So yeah, and that thing with the pandemic in Australia, we've got the state borders are basically shut. So you had
Hmm.
to get from Sydney to Perth, you had to get an exemption and sit in a house for 2 weeks. And all this stuff that you've been reading about suddenly is affecting us personally because I have to go back to Sydney and my mum's dying all of a sudden and I don't really know how I'm going to get back and forth, you know. But I can't just stay in Perth and wait because my kids go to school in Sydney and, you know, so it's totally shit. But it
Hey,
does make you
man.
appreciate the good stuff, you know.
Yeah, 2020 sucks as a whole. I
Yeah.
mean, so we're putting our stuff on the table. Unfortunately, my parents left us this year, both of them,
Right.
on
Oh
two,
no.
on two very separate occasions,
Oh
and
no, Sam. What,
sucks.
oh fuck. Yeah,
And
it's a weird, weird time.
and the key is it does, like you said, it does make you appreciate everything. So from here on out, I find myself being, or at least trying to be, a better father, a better
Yeah.
husband, a better everything, because time is finite and you don't know how much you
Yeah.
got. So
Yeah.
I mean, just appreciate the
I think
time,
that's right.
man.
I'm having real moments of almost euphoria just on a nice day or like really appreciating good moments with my kids because, yeah, you're really faced with how freaking vulnerable it all is, you know? It's
Now
good advice.
this is a ham-fisted segue, but I'm gonna do it. I'm a
Right.
professional, sort of. Um, I mean, like, this kind of ties into the album. I actually felt pretty good about it because your music hit on every form of emotion. I mean, like, when I sat back and I listened to the album, not just as recreation, just to kind of prepare for this, it's very relatable. Obviously, I don't think you knew you were going to be going through this
Yeah.
at the time, of recording. However, there is this like the lyrics seem to me coming from a very personal place, but it's still relatable. Some is upbeat, some not so upbeat. How did you want to just kind of essentially put yourself on the tracks when you record?
Yeah, it's kind of weird how um, relevant it feels. I've had this weird experience of feeling like my life's mirroring my art a bit. Like I made this TV show, helped make a TV show called Upright about a guy struggling to get to Perth because his mum's terminally ill, and then 2 years later it's happening. And the album as well seems to. I guess I really started writing it after I'd moved home from LA, and I was feeling a bit down about some of the sort of stuff that the kind of brutal industry in LA, and I wasn't really enjoying my work, and I guess I'd turned 40. And so the album really is kind of, without making it sound dreary, because I don't think it's dreary, but it is about the passage of time, and about how quickly time seems to have passed a bit. And there's a lot of songs that kind of, you know, like If This Plane Goes Down, which talks about, you know, slightly facing up to the idea of your Holly, that feels relevant all of a sudden.
Now I'm curious. Like we touched on those, but like I want to take a song like I'll Take Lonely Tonight, which was sweet, sorta, because like it's sweet because you do pass the temptations of what could be, you know, given on the road. However, if you're telling this to your, like, I tried to kind of mimic that in my mind, telling that to my wife. I'm pretty sure there was a few follow-up questions. I'm curious, what made you write that, or what made you jump into that mindset where you're just like, hey, look, I got to just put this on Front Street. This is what happens when I'm out.
Yeah, well, look, I always want to write about common experiences, but I'm very, very, I try very hard not to talk about them in cliched ways. You know, I'm not a good pop songwriter because I do sort of have a tendency to try and take new angles on stuff. And a lot of the time when I talk about love, because I'm unusual in my industry and at my age, in that I've been with the same partner since I was a teenager. I mean, we broke up and stuff. So, but we've been together since we were 17. And when you're in our industry, as you know, most people don't hook up with their partners till later. It's a very sort of freewheeling sort of game. And so I can only talk about love and relationships from my point of view, really. I can make it up, I suppose. But one of the things along what I went through, which is going from anonymity to being someone who people wanted to come and see and having a bit of power, I guess.
Okay.
One of the things is that you find yourself in, you know, and I like a drink and I'm a bit of a flirt, and you do find yourself in situations where you think, you know, I'm in a hotel room. There's a reason why people cheat and stuff. It's not because we're evil, it's because we're human.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to unpack that. And because in a long-term relationship, you do have to reassert your choice over and over again. You're not soulmates. Doesn't matter how much you want to be, or how romantic you are, or how many films you watch, or what you wore on your wedding day. There's no such thing as soulmates. There's just a choice to support each other and to keep making the commitment to each other over and over again through good times and bad and all that. And so Lonely Tonight's kind of, yeah, there's no doubt my wife's like, you're writing a song about that stuff now, but we've been together for 27 years. We've talked about this stuff. It's not like it's the first time we ever
Yeah, you didn't just spring it on her.
No, I didn't just go like, oh yeah, I almost kissed a girl once. I mean, come on, we're all grown-ups. And actually it's a very romantic song in a way.
It is.
And people respond to it quite emotionally depending on their own experiences.
And quite honestly, I tested the waters a little bit. I let my wife hear it. I looked at her because this year we're celebrating 10 years of marriage. And we're dealing with, not in a, I don't want to say evil way, but you know, you look at it differently from a decade ago. Yeah. So it's like, you know, you get married, it's full of love and everything. But right now, it's kind of like a bet. It's kind of like, I love you. I bet you I love you more than you love me. I bet half my shit I love you more than I love you.
Yeah, totally.
So like I get the companionship, and obviously I do love her and everything like that. But when you hear stuff like that and you go through your daily life, you kind of understand where like you didn't mean to do anything, or you're not setting out to do something, or you're definitely not setting out to hurt the other.
About, and I'm literally putting her on a pedestal.
You
And
are.
my wife's not a goddess, you know, she's just each other for longer than half our lives. So she isn't a Greek myth, but the through line of everything I try and make these days is really the narrative we choose to tell. And you know, as you know, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in fate, and I don't believe in soul, and I don't believe. I'm a materialist. So all that's left is the meaning we bring things and the stories we tell ourselves. And one of those stories is religion and stuff, and that one doesn't suit me. But you know, these songs are partly stories I'm telling to remind myself of what I value and stuff.
You know, in a lot of your work, and I hope thing offbeat, but you've been labeled a bit as a bit of a provocateur because you're not afraid to go to those areas. You're not afraid to sit down and have those uncomfortable conversations with people, whether it be about that may not be comfortable at that time. And throughout your career, that's kind of been a gift and a curse. And I kind of see that a little bit in this album, where you are expressing your true feelings, but at the same on some parts. I guess that's a long-winded way to say what go into those not so safe areas head first.
No, I mean, I think it's just a compulsion. I think probably if I'm being critical of myself, it's sort of early on, it's a bit attention seeking. Like a lot of people who get into comedy, you're sort of going, oh, I dare to say these things. And if I look back on my career, a hell of a lot of stuff I'm proud of. And that my tendency to say the things you're not meant to say has done good. Especially here in Australia, where I do a bit of political sort of, you know, my song about George Pell, who's a cardinal of the Catholic Church, who I thought was shirking his responsibility to face up to some child abuse accusations of people he was in charge of. And that song had a really big impact on a lot of abuse survivors who contacted me, and I'm proud of that, even though I got a lot of criticism and hatred in the right-wing press. There's other stuff from early days that I just go, I was young and trying to be edgy, and I didn't really, it's just sort of childish or a little bit ignorant or whatever. But I think it's just a compulsion. It's a bit show-offy, but over the years I've sort of honed it into a bit of a weapon, I guess. And this album certainly doesn't do that, although, as you point out, something like I'll Take Lonely Tonight is a slightly provocative way. But it's still a tendency to try and unpack stuff and look it in the eye. And I talk about this album as a romantic, unromantic, or an unromantic, romantic album. The whole mission of what I'm trying to make is to say, is to find the romance in the brutal truth of things. Is to find the beauty in the brutal truth of things.
But that's what I like about this album, because it's not cliche. It's not like a praise fest. It's not a romantic comedy. It's real. It's like,
I hope so.
Okay, there are good things about being with, you know, your partner, but sometimes some things does get a little mundane. Sorry.
And
when you find the little pieces, the little tidbits and the beauty in those that makes it worthwhile. So
that's exactly right. How do we tell ourselves a story that allows the mundane to also be beautiful, right?
and that's kind of what I got from this, mainly because like some of your a lot, at least 3 of your songs are about your commute.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like
A lot of time traveling. Yeah, yeah.
when you really think about it, yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
when you sit back and think about it, it's sort of like, oh yeah, because you look at Tim Minchin, oh, he's a real person, and yeah, he has to do this. But while he's in his commute, while he's in traffic, while he's traveling, he is thinking about these things.
Mm.
And to
Oh,
have a, 4 or 5 minutes to sit back and think about those while you're doing something totally mundane is actually kind of, it's eye-opening. And most people
yeah,
don't want to get to those waters because they will be perceived as boring or they will be perceived as something else.
that's right. And or some people are not into this journey. Another example is I love unpacking in my head that we are one solar system in 200 billion potential solar systems in just our galaxy, which in turn is one galaxy and a potential trillion galaxies in a universe that might be only one universe in a multiverse. And trying to get my head around those distances, which is impossible, but meditating on how tiny we are brings in me a feeling of euphoria. I mean, it's disturbing at times, but I really care about trying to get my head around that. Some people do not want to think about that. They find it really discombobulating. Brian Cox calls it cosmic vertigo. They don't like thinking about how small they are, whereas I do. And similarly, people don't want you to unpack romance or pick through the notion of fate, or for that matter, really stare in the face of death. People don't really necessarily want to be on the mission where you say your death is the end of your life and you're just atoms. Whereas I find all that stuff really beautiful. I remember I did a speech at my old university, Sam, that you might have seen, that like lots of people in America watched actually, because it was sort of pseudo-inspirational. And it really is a sort of manifesto about how to try and be a good person in a meaningless universe. And
Right.
some of the comments under that video, when it was passed around from people who don't believe the universe is meaningless, who believe there's higher power or whatever,
Okay.
they've watched a speech where I've been incredibly passionate about life, but their comments were like, "What a sad life you must have," and it's like, wow, there's a real gap.
Yeah.
There's a real intellectual gap here, because you can't watch that speech and think I've had a sad life. I'm literally talking about how special life is and how you have to grab it and fill it because it's your one chance. And like, it's a really passionate speech. And half the people, or 3/4 of the people in the comments, are like, wow, I watch this speech every week because it's so inspiring. And then there's this other bunch of people who are like, how sad. And I'm like, wow, there's a big old gap here.
It is. And one thing I've learned with people, Tim, is unfortunately, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
So if you learn that and you can
Yeah.
identify that, you're going to, unfortunately, and I'm guilty of this too. I try to remind myself, never scroll, never read the comments.
No. No, I never do these days. But
I
that
try,
hurt people. Hurt
but
people. Yeah,
I'm,
it's such good wisdom.
and when you see it, it's just sort of like, whatever's in my brain, I threw away the 99.9% of the people who thought I did a good job. I just focused
Yeah,
on that one. And
totally.
unfortunately, I just got sucked into whatever that person was doing. So I had to learn that lesson.
Yeah,
Hurt people, man.
yeah, yeah,
But one thing I would like to say is, even though there is some aspects of that where, and I love your work because it does make you think and it does make you look outside the box, but you're a bit of a crowd pleaser too. I mean, when you did Matilda, which is one of my favorite, just growing up watching the movie and then now seeing it like live action, and then Groundhog Day, which is, you can't go wrong with that. how did you feel being a little bit of where you got those good feelings from, I guess, nostalgia from people like myself who
Yeah.
remember that, instead of, and I'm saying this out loud, forcing people to think critically.
Yeah.
How was that the contrast between what you normally do versus, the reception of the two worlds?
Well, I think Matilda was so good for me because all I wanted was a career in the arts. When I was in my teens, I didn't have Broadway lights in my eyes. I was just thinking maybe I could get a job at a piano bar. I wasn't like, I'm going to be a star. And so when I started doing comedy and being a bit provocative started getting me an audience, I just went with it because I was just like, oh, I've got a career. My God, maybe I don't have to get a day job.
Yeah.
And so when Matilda came along, it wasn't so much that I had to turn a corner as that I was allowed to stop poking the bear, as they say. And it really refocused me on the fact that I don't need to be provocative because I've got other skills. I'm an okay lyricist, and I care about story, and I can write from the point of view of others, which I guess is a big thing if you're a theatre writer. It seems with Matilda that I was able to write from the point of view of a 5-year-old genius and the point of view of a very damaged 30-year-old woman in Miss Honey and a despot in Miss Trunchbull, and that just set off a whole other area of my life where I got to write Groundhog Day. And again, that's a very meditative, very funny, quite satirical, but basically a meditation on how to have meaning in a meaningless universe. And then I got to Make Up Right, which I'm super proud of. So I guess it kicked open the door for me where I got to go and tell stories that go for the heartstrings and are a bit more mainstream. And I'm really comfortable in that area as well. In fact, I'm thrilled that I got to do that and I didn't get trapped in comedy and satire. I love that I got a career out of comedy, but it's not me particularly. I'm not that interested in comedy. I'm interested in theater and stories,
But that's one thing I think I like the most about Upright, because it does have comedic beats, but it is by no means a comedy. And what made you switch? What made you just say, like, look, I want to take a chance on this? Because, the low-hanging fruit is to make that a comedy.
Yeah, well, it certainly was pitched to me as a comedy. I think it was just where I was in my life. Like, I just saw it came to me, this guy, my friend Chris Taylor, had this idea about a guy trying to get across Australia with a piano. It's just a sort of concept. And he had this idea that it was like an Odd Couple thing with a runaway. And it was very much meant to be a comedy. And I think just where I was in my life. And also I was feeling a bit like I didn't want to just write gags. But also the other writers on the team were all really great drama writers. And just the idea of like getting across a desert, carrying a burden, like, Christ with his cross. It just, some stories have the scaffold or the bones to carry more weight, and you can identify, you go, okay, this story's, it's a fun idea, it's going to be a comedy because it can't carry much weight. Whereas a road journey across Australia, the guy heading towards his home, and that's got big strong scaffold that you can hang a lot on. And we just discussed that a lot, and I thought, let's go for it. Let's try and really hit people in the guts at some point here.
Now, one thing about this, about just watching it, and one thing I liked, but I don't know if this crossed your mind or did you just do it, it's a lot of Australian to an American audience. It's like a lot. Dialogue, as far as the references, but did you care how the American audience perceived it?
Well, I was very keen that Americans watch this because I do think it's a universal story.
It is.
And what you want to do is get the balance right, because it's frustrating as an Australian. I've lived in the States, obviously, and everyone's like, that a lot of American sense of Australia is just so skewed by the freaking Crocodile Hunter and Mick Dundee, and just like it'd be like an Australian thinking America is the America of the Wild West. You know, it's just, you know, this perception that our country's dangerous and not particularly sophisticated, and you know, like Australia is a wealthier country than America, and it's more as technologically advanced, and our education's better and our health is better, and oh dear. So we this idea that we're a backwater is annoying. However, you also don't want to tell a story of Australia without, like, I mean, there are some mad people in the middle of our country, and the middle of our country has no cities. It's as big as the United States, but we've only got 20 million people in the whole country, and there's vast areas of our country that is unpopulated, and yeah, there are snakes and stuff. So I wanted to get the balance right between kind of exploiting that Aussie cliche stuff, but not being an Aussie cliche. And I think Upright does that. You get to spend time in the outback of Australia, and you get to spend time with these eccentric characters, but the story is universal, and it's not dumbed down. It's not like that, like, oh, we're Aussies and we're super simple, nice people, and you know, we're a bit unsophisticated, but we're really nice, eh? It's just like, fuck that.
Well, one thing I want to know, this is more of a personal thing, because I always love asking artists this question. Can you watch your work or listen to your work objectively? Or do you just like, oh, shut it off, I can't see me, or I can't listen?
I'm a bit in between. It depends. There's stuff I can't, with my live performance stuff, it takes about 8 years before I can watch it without cringing.
Oh.
Like, it takes a long time. And but like Upright, I've only watched it once since it got finished, but I like it because it's not me, you know. Okay. It's the light and the makeup and the hair and the acting allows me to have a sense of removal. And also it just depends. Some stuff you make you're really proud of, and some stuff you make you're like, that wasn't my best work. And you just, it can be really, you know, and I hate my singing voice and I hate my face. But I must admit, over the years, I've got better at just going, oh, no one cares whether you hate your voice or your face. You've got work to do. Like, get in the studio and mix the songs, and stop going, I don't like my voice. Like, just shut up. Just, it's not about you, you know. So I have got a bit better at, strangely, just not indulging my insecurities. They can bugger off, really. And they're still there. I just don't indulge them.
Speaking of insecurities, like, one of the biggest magnets of my insecurities is like my son. And like, I don't know what he has in him, but he doesn't understand, or I think he gets it a little bit, the podcast world. And I don't know if you've seen me motion with my hands. I'm like, all right, get out. And like, he's like,
yeah, my voice is screaming downstairs.
Exactly. He's trying to like get in. And I'm curious, do your kids kind of understand what you're doing, or do they just see you doing a thing? Do they ever put two and two together?
Well, my kids are 13 and 11 now, so that they increasingly have an understanding of it. I don't live a, you know, I live a really, I don't, you know, I do this sort of press with smart people and talk about my work, but I don't do red carpets, and I'm not in magazines. And so,
thank you for all to be smart. It just occurred to me. Like, yeah, okay,
yeah, take that. We don't live a celeb life. And so it took years before my kids really even understood that I'd get stopped on the street and they wouldn't really understand it. That I think probably Violet, my daughter's getting to an age where I don't think having a high profile parent is good for kids, basically. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the reasons I've tried to sort of stay behind the camera and do more composing and stuff, and not just always be on the telly and stuff. That I think, yeah, they don't really respect me. Like I want my daughter to watch Upright, and she doesn't want to watch it, and they don't really care.
Okay, yeah.
You know, like they've come to one concert. They came to a concert recently. I thought they were old enough. It wasn't one of my sort of. It didn't have too much adult material. The experience of sitting in a room with 3,000 people clapping your dad, I think, is really discombobulating, actually. But I have to let them experience it because it is my life.
I understand. Now, I am by no stretch of the imagination the cool dad. By no means. Like my son comes in here and he sees dad. Oh, it's just dad playing with his computer again.
Yeah.
And like sometimes they peek in and see, I guess, pop stars like yourself, and it's just sort of like, and he's starting to. He doesn't get it, but he sees dad talking to the guy from TV. So he's like, he has questions.
How old is he?
He's 7.
Yeah, right. So starting to get his head around it.
And I'm trying to explain to him, no, this is not normal per se.
No.
It's normal for us, but this can go away at any moment.
I remember when my kids were young, and in America, you know, we didn't watch any network telly, but we tend to watch telly that we know people in, because you want to support your friends and you want to watch.
Right.
You know, you want to watch what your mates are doing, either actors or writers. And my kids just thought it was totally normal that they'd be watching telly, and there's Ewan, and then he comes through the front door for a dinner, you know.
Right.
But for years, they just like, well, everyone knows everyone on telly. It's just a normal thing. It's a normal thing.
I'm trying my best to strip that from them.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is just what it is. And I guess I can
get there in the end.
Maybe. But one thing I think I want to learn from you, because you've been doing this for quite some time, like after all your achievements, after all your projects, after all you've done, if you sat down and just broke it down to your kids or me or whoever, you'll seem pretty down to earth. What makes you not really take yourself or take all of this so seriously?
I think I take myself too seriously. I think I take.
Really?
Yeah, I think I take the project. I don't. I'm not very light. I have a lot of fun, and I try to have fun. I get very upset about, like, you know, like all of us these days, with too much. What I've done recently to make myself a lot happier is stop reading Twitter. I really, really was not in a good mental space, simply because I was reading too much news, especially from your country. Yeah, can you fix that, please, Sam? I think I take my work very seriously. I'm a workaholic. I really love my work, and I really try and get the balance right, but I do work a lot, and I take the mission to try and live a good life and be a good person very seriously, and I'm hard on myself when I think I've failed, and it's a bit tiring, but I really, you know, care about stuff, and I'm a bit analytical, which can turn into self-indulgence very quickly, and I'm very aware of that. And you know, I'm hoping as I get through my 40s, I learn to be a bit more settled and not so desperate to make what's my next thing I'm going to make, and how do I make it better? And, you know, I need to chill the F out a little bit, take a few more holidays. But I think I'm an okay dad. I worry that I'm bringing up my kids to think intense pursuit of, you know, excellence or whatever is the only value set. I actually think, as my kids have got a bit older, and I don't know where you're at with this, I brought my kids up to be like you, polite, and, you know, you do your best all the time. And I feel like I need to change that dial a bit and just let them know they don't have to do anything. They're loved anyway, and they can be a bit messy, and they can not always be perfect. And that I think I've made them feel like they have to be like outstandingly good children all the time, and I need to let them know that they can throw paint at the wall sometimes, you know.
I'm on the fence with that a little bit because I do find myself pushing that same drive I have,
Yeah.
and it feels weird. It feels weird to do it because it's not exactly in my kid's nature, but I want him to do his best. But
Yeah.
in order for him to do his best, I kind of got to establish what the best is, air quotes. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, in order to do that, you have to jump into that little monster I have in my brain that says like, all right, we got to
go.
move, we got
Yeah.
to go, we got to.
You want them to inherit that drive. You do. You do want your kids to inherit drive, but you don't want them to inherit a sense that if they don't kick goals all the time, they're a failure.
I try to make it more of a safety net. Like
Yeah.
if he falls short of whatever that goal is, hey, I'm still here. Hey, I'm gonna hug you. Hey, we're gonna. It's cool.
You did your best. You tried your best.
You tried. You did your. I rather you try and fail instead of just not try at all.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard pushing that to a 7-year-old, but
no, but that's when they learn it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think my mission for the next 10 years is just to, because of course what you tell your kids is nothing compared to what you show your kids. So modeling behavior is what makes your kids, not lectures.
I'm terrible with that. I am.
Well, I'm a lecturer. I like to go, this is how you should be. But of course, all they're doing is watching. They're watching me, and they're watching how hard I work and how addicted I am to other people's affirmation, and how addicted I am to, you know, achieving goals. And I need to show them that it's okay to like chill a bit.
That's the hard part.
And I need that for me and my marriage and everything as well.
I'm saying that for me.
It's been an intense 15 years. Like,
exactly. Hey,
I've been pushing hard.
Like, that's hard to shut off something I've been doing for decades.
Totally. I'm so used to pedaling.
Exactly. I mean, but hey, before I get off here, I do want to highlight one thing. Your work, I mean, that same drive, that same thing that pushes you, you actually do it for good with your charity work, whether it be activism, whether it be fundraising, the White Wine in the Sun, the Fading Symphony, Come Home, Still Call Australia. I mean, like, for a guy who who really loves his home, really loves the people around him, you really do a great job showing how much you care, and showing about community and being together and just keeping it all together. I mean, do you want to speak a little bit of your charity work, or you just kind of want to be?
Yeah, no, I mean, I really appreciate you pointing it out, because I don't do enough. I don't do enough for charity, and I'd like to do better at that. But and to the extent that I do that work, I don't do it to get affirmation. But it is nice, because in my position, what people really want when they interview me, and in Australia especially, is for me to say something contentious, so they can say Tim Minchin's raging against this now. And I always think, well, sure, you can write about what I'm cross about, but why don't you also write about like all the nice things I do, so you don't paint a picture of me as this edgy guy, because I'm just not. So I really appreciate you noticing and bringing it up. I think finding ways to, this notion of checking your privilege, which I think it's a very, very good, important notion. That's one of the good things to come out of the internet, is these ideas, these memes. And check your privilege is a good meme, but of course it's mutated and become just a thing people hit each other with.
Now.
Yeah. And what I'm really interested in making sure, I'm very, very aware of my privilege, almost cripplingly aware of my privilege. Because I am a materialist, I understand the extent to which luck is the really only fucking thing to which to attribute anything that's good in my life. And because of that, so checking your privilege to me is understand the role of luck, which is pretty much everything. and find ways to mitigate your own luck by sharing it, by helping people less lucky to the extent that you can. And I really, if I could say anything about charity, it's like, get off the internet and telling people, like, don't just check your privilege by posting something supportive on Instagram or discuss the notion of privilege by batting other people over the head with it. Actually do actions that acknowledge your privilege. And that's what I'm trying to do, and definitely not doing enough, but I guess that's my little bit on that.
Hey, one thing I can say, I was privileged to have this conversation with you, mainly because I'm eating up your time a little bit, and I thank you for going a little bit overtime. It's just, you're an interesting guy, and quite honestly, when you get two guys, I mean, when you start hitting on stuff, I just kind of want to sit back and listen.
Yeah.
So,
I love chatting with people who are interesting and interested. It's much more fun than just doing an interview that's trying to hit the beat. So I really appreciate it.
I try my best not to do those type of interviews, but sometimes it comes out in the way and sometimes it doesn't, but it's pretty cool. But before we get out of here, we got to do it. We got to hit the beats somehow. Let's do the big plug. All things Tim Minchin. Just go ahead. The show.
Okay. The main thing I want, we're here to talk about my album Apart Together. My next single is called Airport Piano. It comes out in a few weeks.
That song.
It's really fun. And then the album Apart Together comes out in November, and it's like an hour-long proper sit-down and listen storytelling record. You can get it on vinyl. You pre-order it now. And if you're in the States, I really want you to watch Upright. It's on Sundance now, which you can get through lots of places, Amazon and stuff.
I got the app.
Find your way to it.
Yeah.
Because you'll love it. Stick with Upright. Like you might find the first couple of episodes like tonally for Americans, like, what is this? But you will absolutely not regret going all the way.
I will say this, I've showed my best restraint not to ask you about season 2 or what's coming next. What you're saying is a lot of restraint for me because I want to know, but I don't want to spoil it. So,
I don't know. Yeah, COVID has kind of screwed us on season 2, but that doesn't mean it's gone forever. It's just,
delayed.
It's just exactly that.
However, I mean, like, in one little beat about this album. Now, I did read this, and if this sounds like a hack question, I apologize, but apparently this is a 20-year project in the making of this album.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's not. I've been making it over the last 2 years, but the weird thing, when I was in my teens and 20s, I guess what I thought I would try and do is be a musician, a singer-songwriter, like have a band. And really in about 2000, I set about trying to get a record deal, and it's now 2020. I'm releasing my debut album. I've been writing songs for 35 years. This is the debut album. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, but I've done all this live stuff and all this theater, and I've finally got into the studio and done it. So, and I like it. It's not going to be for everyone, and it's not going to break records or get number 1 on the pop charts. But I really hope people enjoy it.
You don't know that. It could. I really
never know.
You never know, because it's a great storytelling album, and I love it. And like I said, is it cool if we play a few cuts on the podcast from it?
Yeah, totally.
Because I want to give people a little snippet of it. That way they could go out and they could check it out.
I'd love you to do that. That'd be brilliant.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you again for giving us a little bit of your time. And I wish you the best, and just keep prospering and just keep doing your thing, man.
Thanks so much, Sam. Thank you so much for the time.
All right. Thank you. And I appreciate it.
Have a great day. Night. What is it?
Yeah. All right. Have a great day. All right. That's cool.
All right. Cheers, Sam. Bye, Ali.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.